Welcome to our podcast for college Catholics, where we discuss faith and spirituality from a Catholic perspective. I'm Philip Patrick, and in today's episode, I will welcome Jason Evert to our podcast. Jason has traveled 6 continents to bring the message of purity to millions of people, more than 20 years. So he's the best-selling author of more than 15 books, including St. John Paul the Great, How to Find Your Soulmate Without Losing Your Soul, and the course You, Life, Love, and the Theology of the Body. He's a frequent guest on podcasts and radio programs throughout the country and has appeared in MSNBC, Fox News, the BBC, and EWTN. Jason runs Chastity Project, hosts the podcast Lust is Boring, and leads an international alliance of young people who promote purity in more than 40 countries. Hello, Jason. Thank you for being on our podcast and welcome.
Thank you for having me on.
I've been discussing the commandments and the part of the catechism. So I got to the Sixth Commandment and Ninth Commandment, and those typically go together. So before we enter into the commandment and how to talk about it, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to dedicate your life to promoting chastity?
Well, it especially started for me when I was in college. I started leading high school retreats, and the kids would open up to me about all the struggles they were having to do with dating, relationships, sexuality. Really didn't seem like they had any guidance there in terms of the formation in human love. And then I was also doing 3 years of sidewalk counseling, crisis pregnancy counseling, women who were contemplating an abortion. And I just started feeling late because I was meeting these women 45 minutes before their abortion appointment. Wow. And I'm like wondering, why am I meeting her now? Why couldn't I have met her when she was 16? Because maybe if she learned about chastity then, she never would have ended up in this difficult situation. So I realized to save the most unborn babies, you don't do it at the door of an abortion clinic, you do it in a high school classroom. And so at the same time, I was learning St. John Paul II's book, Love and Responsibility, and it felt like this was really the antidote to a lot of this hurt and confusion. So I started sharing that with young people, and you could just see the light bulb turn on, and I started speaking at high schools, and then now 26 years later, speaking to about 2 million high school and college students in person, sharing kind of God's plan for human love.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's awesome. So the church, of course, when she speaks about the Sixth Commandment, you shall not commit adultery, or the Ninth Commandment, you shall not desire your neighbor's wife. Of course, we're not only saying not to commit these things, but also encourage chastity, as your apostolate is about. So why don't you let us know, why don't you tell us a little bit about how should we understand chastity as a virtuous way of living?
Yeah, well, first, I think it helps to remove some misconceptions. It doesn't mean celibacy. It doesn't mean abstinence strictly. Celibacy is the state of not being married. Abstinence is just the absence of sex. Chastity is different. It's more synonymous with purity, which means not simply what we do or don't do with our body, but our imagination, our heart, our intentions, our eyes, our ears, what we listen to. And so it's a virtue that doesn't eliminate sexual desire. It orders our desires according to the demands of authentic human love. And so the function of chastity is to free us to love, because if I don't have self-control, I can't make a gift of myself. And it also frees us to know if we're authentically being loved, because if a person's unwilling to be with us, unless we do those things with them, it clearly shows that it's not us that they desire, but the pleasure that they can get from us. And so chastity is not the enemy of love. Rather, chastity makes love possible. Right.
And also, it brings us sort of integration of the whole person, right? To understand the whole person, mind, the will, the intelligence, the body, and to be able to love not only our neighbor, but also God purely, right? So now how does chastity or purity affect the person positively? Why is it worth the sacrifice? Because obviously there are sacrifices to be done to live a life of chastity. Well, how does it affect the person positively and develop the personality in that sense?
Well, I think Christ said it best when he said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, they will see God." And that doesn't simply mean see him in heaven, see him in the next life. I think if we're pure in heart, we see him more clearly in this life. We see him in the faith. We see him in our boyfriend, girlfriend, our spouse. We see him even in ourselves. And so it gives us that clarity of vision. Now, St. Alphonsus Liguori said that when a raven finds a dead body, the first injury that it inflicts is to pluck out the eyes. And he said the same injury that impurity inflicts in the soul immediately is to take away the light of the things of God. And so just as impurity clouds our intellect and darkens our faith, purity of heart gives us this capacity to see God in ourselves, in heaven, and in others. And so it's a real ability to see others. It's instead of just reducing them to their sexual value, which is lust, chastity enables us to see the full person and their value.
Right. And also what I tell many kids that are dating and then hopefully will get married, it helps you to live a chaste relationship with that other person, helps you see the person for what it is and value more the person, and the love is in a sense more valuable, more pure, more intense in a sense, right?
Yeah. So you're not loving the person less. I mean, imagine a high school boy tempted to sleep with his girlfriend. He could actually say to her, as much as I might like to do that, I'm not, because my abstinence tonight is going to be a greater expression of love than making love, right, because I want to do what's best for you, not just what feels good to me. So it's not a renunciation of love. It's an acknowledgement that sacrifice is the food of love, and I'm doing what's best for you. I will the good of you instead of simply willing you as a good for me.
Right, and in that sense, a frequent question that I get from young adults is, it's a moral question, right? How much physical affection can a boyfriend show to the girlfriend, or vice versa, before it becomes sinful? Or how can you identify that it's already crossed the line, that is wrong, let's say, against the commandment?
I think three ways to form your conscience in that area is, one, you could ask, would I be willing to do this in front of her parents? And if the answer is like, no, I would never do this in front of her mom or dad, that's probably an indication you shouldn't do it behind their back. You could also ask yourself, if this person isn't my future husband or wife, how far would I want someone else to be going with my future wife tonight?
Right.
And if the answer is like, I really wouldn't want them doing that together because I don't really think she needs to bring the memories of that experience into our relationship, then hold yourself to the same standard. And then also to try to distinguish in yourself between affection and arousal. Arousal, deliberate sexual arousal, is appropriate for marriage, because one way to think of it is, what are you doing on the train if you're not going to Cleveland? Right? Like, why stir up these romantic passions that you're only going to have to subdue, because they can only be morally satisfied inside of that sacrament. And so affection, fine, but deliberate sexual arousal is something we should save for marriage. And so passionate kissing, things like that, things you wouldn't do in front of the person's parents, try to not look at it from like, well, everybody else is hooking up and everybody
right.
else is going to bed. No. We're not comparing ourselves to everybody else, but rather the comparison is, how would Joseph, as an 18-year-old guy, treated the Virgin Mary with tremendous reverence throughout his whole life? Really chew on that as a guy. Like, okay, he was given the most beautiful woman on earth, and her spotless purity was entrusted to a college-age guy. So his love was not a threat to her purity. I mean, his love was the safeguard to her purity. And so we need to spend some time looking in that direction instead of looking in the opposite direction, thinking, well, I'm better than those people.
Right, and also many times, at least those that are well-intended and want to live a virtuous life, they realize afterwards, well, obviously we went too far, right? So their conscience also, if it's basically well-formed, it will tell them, I think this was too much, or too selfish, or you were manipulating or using the other person for your sexual pleasure, in a sense, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so we need to really look at our intentions. What are my motives for trying to end up alone with her at 11 o'clock at night when nobody's around? I mean, really, what am I? Like, am I expressing affection to her and romance and flowers and all this just for the sake of making her feel loved? Or is it to kind of soften her moral stature so that she'll give me the things that I want? That's a real covert desire to use. And so chastity really challenges us to look at our motives. Like, am I really desiring to bless this girl or to take advantage of her? And using can obviously go in both directions. It's not that the guy's the bad guy, girl's the victim. Using is going in both directions, so we both have to check our motives. Whether it's the way we dress, the way we treat each other, they should be coming from a pure place.
Right. So in that sense, how do you think, or in what ways do you find that young people, teenagers, college students, and young adults in general, mostly sin against the Sixth and Ninth Commandment in this case? So what do you think, in our day and age, what would be the greatest sins again, or ways of breaking the commandments?
Well, I think the most frequently broken ones are on the screen. because in order to do it in person, it's a pretty narrow set of circumstances that have got to fall into alignment. I've got to find this girl. She's going to want to be with me. We've got to get alone. She's got to be interested. That's a narrow set of circumstances. Whereas this thing that's sitting in my pocket on a screen, like 24 hours a day, when I'm feeling alone or bored or lonely or angry or stressed or tired, 2 clicks and I'm into a whole world of counterfeit love. So it takes a lot of self-restraint to be like, I'm not going to binge on those false counterfeits. I'm not going to use somebody online just because I'm not using them in person. It doesn't make me a better human being. And so I think the most common temptation is what's going on this screen. And not only looking at pornography, but becoming the pornography of sharing pictures with others, or even girls thinking like, well, it's not bad because I'm just reading about it. I'm not actually looking at it. This is like romantasy novels and things like that. This isn't ultimately what we want. It's almost like standing at the window of a restaurant looking in, thinking you're going to get fed. I mean, you're going to just be hungry and you're going to walk away only realizing that you don't have what you want. They have a legitimate ache for intimacy, but just watching other people do that stuff is not going to fill us. Right.
And also normally, too much of the screen tends to lead to want to act in that sense, right? So it leads either to masturbation or to desire even to pay for sex and that type of thing. So it's not very common, not mostly common, but it happens a lot too, right?
Yeah, because the eyes, the scriptures tell us, are not satisfying with seeing. The ears are not satisfied with hearing. And our sexual desires are designed to be all-consuming, that once that spark of arousal has been lit, we're typically not satisfied until we're relieved. And so when we're starting with just might seem like, oh, I'm just looking at this, it's not full on that, these justifications are always at the beginning of something bad. Because if you're doing something good, you don't justify it. It's not like you're going to feed the homeless and think, well, at least I'm not robbing a bank. Our hearts are at peace, so there's no disunity in ourselves. And so, yeah, let's not make excuses. Let's realize, yes, just because this isn't as bad as that doesn't make this good.
Right. So in that sense, how would you say that pornography, first of all, but also all the individualistic sins of masturbation and other similar sins against purity, how do they affect the personality that starts, in a sense, to live a double life, right?
Well, from a guy's perspective, I can attest to the fact I grew up with a lot of pornography until I was late high school, then finally got rid of it. And it really gives you these porn goggles. Like, you don't even know how to look at a woman except through the lens of lust. And you basically begin to judge and treat women according to how much lust they generate in you. That if they don't generate a lot, then they shouldn't receive a lot of attention or, respect. And it's like, wait, I'm becoming so incredibly superficial. And so my capacity to be captivated by one woman I get robbed of that because it's training me in this habit of mental polygamy. And I'm thinking, oh, well, I'm fine. Nobody's getting hurt. But my capacity to love and just to be an authentic man is I'm losing it, because instead of sacrificing myself to do what's best for her, I'm essentially just sacrificing a woman for the sake of myself. And that's not real manhood. It's emasculation. It's effeminacy at the end of the day. And so, yeah, it really damages your capacity to love. And I think a woman in her heart can tell the difference between a man who looks at her as a respected and beloved companion versus a man who looks at her as some collection of body parts.
Right. And also, if I'm not mistaken, women within marriage, they see when a husband acts into pornography or something similar, they see that as a clear way of adultery, to the point that if it continues for a while, it makes it difficult to live with that other person. I don't know. That seems to be the reality, right?
Yeah, it's legitimate sexual betrayal trauma the woman is going through. And she's typically gaslighted into thinking, oh, no, I'm not actually cheating on you. And the reason I have to do this is because you're not available and you don't look like these people. And so the blame is shifted onto the woman, and she's left there cut to the core of like, why is it that I'm not enough for this man who pledged to give himself totally to me? Why does he need to look elsewhere for satisfaction? And so it's a deep wound that relationship suffers. And for such women, I'd recommend going to websites like bloomforcatholicwomen.org. bloom.com. So Bloom for Catholic Women is a great resource for women whose partners or husbands are addicted to those kinds of things, so that you can realize you're not alone, and the things you're asking for, fidelity, are not an exceptional ask. I mean, that's standard behavior. I mean, you're just asking for your vows to be lived out. And so if you're feeling alone or gaslighted, realize, no, you're not asking for too much. And yes, it's a lie that, every man does it. That's not true. A true man should be able to overcome that stuff so he can be free to love you.
Right. And many men try to live a virtuous love and a pure life. And many people. In that sense, because this can start at when one is single, dating, and it carries on many times into marriage. Sometimes men, or sometimes even women, may be addicted to this, and they could work against it, but sometimes it's an addiction that is very difficult to break. When would you say that these things, or these sins, for example, pornography or masturbation, when do these things imply an addiction, that it's very difficult to break and may require more treatment?
Yeah, I remember asking a counselor who specializes in helping people break from sexual addiction, when is it an addiction? Is it when it's once a week, once a month, once a day? Like, what's the cutoff point? And he said it doesn't really have to do with the frequency of compulsion, but the inability to resist the compulsion when the compulsion arises. Meaning, if it's only once a month, but when that desire comes, I can't say no to it, that's an addiction. And so now we need to be careful, though, of just kind of relieving ourselves of any moral culpability of saying, oh, well, I'm addicted, I can't say no. Oh, you can say no. You can say no at any time of the day. I mean, imagine if the most addicted person, let's say it's some college guy, and he's sitting there at the school library and he's looking at some bad pictures on his phone, and he looks out of the corner of his eye and he sees this beautiful woman he's always wanted to meet all semester, and she's about to walk right past him, and in 5 seconds, she's going to see what he's looking at on his phone. How easy would it be for him to just change the screen? Oh, I'm studying about pediatric oncology right now. Like, in an instant, he could resist that, because a greater desire, the desire to impress her and show herself a man, would be greater than the desire just to use these, harem of imaginary brides on the internet. And so the desire is there, but the motivation is sometimes lacking. And so we've got to realize, okay, you've got it within you. I mean, by virtue of your baptism, you can say no to these temptations, but you might need a little support. You might need to get some accountability. You might need a counselor, a good spiritual director, a good counselor. That's the key, is don't try to go Lone Ranger on this. Find people that can walk alongside you towards victory. Right.
So in that sense, if you can talk a little bit more about that, what would you recommend to someone that is maybe not yet into a complete full-blown addiction, but with a very deeply rooted vice? Like these vices tend to root pretty quickly, though. So what would you recommend to someone who is battling addiction or pornography or masturbation or any of these sins?
Yeah, well, I mean, step number one, go to the Sacrament of Reconciliation. Find a good priest. I know there's some good ones with Miles Christi. I think you might be familiar with it. Yeah, I think those guys are pretty good. Find a good priest. Stick with that priest. Don't go priest hopping every 3 weeks, this one to that one. That way nobody can kind of smell the trail of your sin. No, find a good one and stick with them. Okay, we tried that last month. That doesn't seem to be working. Let's try this now. Let's try that now. So, I mean, if you're an athlete and you're changing your coach, your swing coach in golf every 3 weeks, you're not going to make a lot of progress. In the same respect, find a good spiritual coach and devote yourself for that. And he might be able to say, hey, look, this I think is more than just spiritual, more than just theological. I think there's some psychological stuff going on here. Maybe some trauma in your childhood, maybe some other stuff that you're processing. I think it'd be good to get a mental health professional in here. Here's a good one. Call up Dr. Peter Kloponis or call up Dr. Greg Bottaro. Like, there's some good Catholic counselors out there. Get plugged into them, because it's important we're tackling this thing, not just from a spiritual and theological perspective, but from an emotional one, a psychological one, a physiological one. Are you eating right? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you exercising vigorously multiple times a week? If you're doing these things, your problems aren't going to go away, but they're going to become a lot more manageable than if you're sleep deprived and eating a bunch of junk and not exercising, not getting outside, not having community life, not having accountability, and you're wondering, oh, gee, why is this so difficult? It's because your sole companion is your screen. How easy would it be to turn to that when there's nowhere else to turn? And so we got to approach this from a fully human perspective if we're going to see results.
Right. And in that sense, good devotions are also important, like devotion to the Holy Eucharist, the Holy Rosary. Some of these things in themselves help us fill our imagination with good images and push a little bit more away the bad images that are many times recurring and that are triggers also, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, I know you wrote Forged, a book that helps also young men for chastity. How does that? How does the book work, or is it would you recommend that book to young men?
Yep, it's called Forged, and there's a Spanish one, Forjado, and it's basically a 20 or 33-day game plan for guys, where, day one, let's try this spiritual weapon. Day two, let's try this. So that by the end of the month or whatever, you've got a lot of different tools or weapons that you can use to battle these temptations. On day one, we tell you, hey, text the word forge to 66866, and we'll send you a video every day. So day one is me. Day two is Matt Fradd, then Father Mike Schmitz, then Father Jacques Philippe. So every day of the month-long journey, you're getting content in the book and video. It's only like 5 minutes long, a video a day, but it's kind of accompanying you. And we encourage the guys, don't do this by yourself. Find a couple of guys to do it with and say, hey, let's take Lent and let's do these 33 days together to kick off Ash Wednesday. So you've got some brotherhood, some fellowship to go through this. And so that's the idea. You can get it at chastity.com in the different languages we've translated into as well. So chastity.com, click on the store, the books, and then you'll see Forged there.
Yeah, and I'll put all those links in the show notes so that everybody can easily access them. Now, how do you see, or what would you say about the Sixth Commandment and Ninth Commandment, and how it affects one's vocation to marriage? Right? Does it ruin it completely? Does it not? Is it possible to work it out? Or what would you say to a young man, a young woman who are engaged and they, sometimes the young man has to recognize he's addicted to pornography or something similar. What would you say to that couple? How does it affect marriage?
Well, I would say that a person's freedom is best measured by their capacity to love. And so whatever inhibits my ability to love, whether it's my lust, my selfishness, my egoism, it is to that extent that I am not free. And so pornography wounds our ability to love freely. And I remember speaking at a Catholic high school, and the teacher was telling me, it was an all-girls high school, she brought a group of college guys to speak to the girls about how they practice their faith in college. During the discussion, it came up that one of the guys looks at porn. And the teacher said to the guy, in front of 30 high school girls, don't you think that could present a problem in your marriage? And he's like, what, that I look at porn? And he's like, why would that be a problem? He said, isn't that what a wife is for? It's like, wow. No, marriage is not the fulfillment of porn. Porn is the distortion of human love. And so we can't look at marriage as something that's just going to fulfill all our pornographic desires. If anything, it's going to pollute the marriage and destroy your capacity to see your bride and love her rightly.
Right. Of course, in that sense, a good understanding of marriage and what it is for and how to live a truly married life would make this poor guy understand that is no relationship with fulfilling porn or one's desire for sexuality. Very good. Well, then, any last thoughts that you would like to leave us with at the end of this podcast episode to wrap it up and give some good insights about chastity?
I think the most important thing is that purity is a gift from Jesus Christ. It's not that you're getting stronger and stronger and stronger. It's more that you're realizing your weakness and how God needs to carry you through this. And so sometimes he allows us to fumble in this area of life for quite some time until we realize our absolute dependency upon him to practice this virtue. And so spend time in Eucharistic adoration to heal your mind and your eyes. Go to the Sacrament of Reconciliation at least once a month. Carry a rosary. Wear a miraculous medal. Go to God for the strength to live this out. And he'll give that gift to you. Just ask in faith and don't be discouraged when you mess up. That's the primary and principal spirit the evil one is going to want to impose. Oh, you messed up again. You think God loves you. It's useless even trying again. You're just going to fall. That's a temptation from hell. No, yeah, you fell. You're human. Let's get up. Let's go. And so keep that spirit of encouragement, trust in God, and he'll complete the good work he began in you. And so to help you to live it out, go to chastity.com. We've got all kinds of videos there. We've got a podcast called Lust is Boring. We have a website called jp2trails.com where we do wilderness backpacking retreats for young adults to help them discover St. John Paul II's teachings on human love. So we've got lots of resources on our YouTube, Instagram, X, Facebook. Just go to chastity.com or to any of the social media handles and then / Jason Evert, and you'll see our content there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us, for your witness, for your suggestions and also for dedicating your life to promoting chastity.
Well, thank you for having me on. Please keep us in your prayers and be assured of ours in return.
Absolutely. So, well, thank you everyone for being with us. That is all for today. Thank you for listening, and please share this episode with your friends and leave a review in Spotify and Apple Podcasts or in YouTube. And make sure you buy one of Jason's books and go to chastity.com. So hope to see you next time. May God bless your day.